This is the final video in the hallway series, and I want to discuss the model. I want to discuss a little bit of the texturing and the post-processing and show you some final renders of the scene. So this is the model here, and as you can see, I didn't create the whole upper level. In fact, I didn't even create the roof. All right, what I've done since the last time you may have seen this is I just went around and I tilted a few things, a couple of pictures there. As you can see, I created some damage in the banister, and I took this door sort of off of its hinges, although I didn't create the hinges. And that was the main thing. And then I came in and I added some lights and a camera. And we'll just talk a little bit about this. I've got an area light here. I've got a point light down here. And what I do tend to do is I do tend to put all my lights in, and often I'll have multiple cameras, and I can just switch through them for different render angles. So that if, I'm looking through the camera here, I'll press 0. I can have multiple cameras if I want different positions. I don't have to move this and then say, oh, I really like that position. So, yeah, camera and point lights. I've got sort of an orangish color here, and then I've got an emission on each of these lamps, which I'll show you in a moment, and then I put a point light around each of these. Okay, and I guess I've got one more light here. I've also got an HDRI image in the background. It's just something that I got from the internet, and I have multiple ones, and so you can find the one that you like the best. All right, and I've got that set out to 0.9, I guess, for the strength. All right, so let's have a look at this in the material preview and take a moment to load the textures, because I did the textures using the UDIM method. So multiple UV tiles, and I believe there are 19, and I'm going to show you those. So let's just let this load up, and then we'll continue. All right, so here it is, and as you can see, it's already textured. So these are textures that I created in Substance Painter, and there's the emission that I was mentioning on the lights. And I should say that I did my render, which I will show you in a moment, in Eevee. I do a lot of work in Eevee. I just want to come over here and show you that I render samples to 150. I have ambient occlusion turned on, and I often tend to put the distance at 1 and the factor at 2. I have bloom on and screen space reflections. When I did my render, there was a little bit of light in behind the door, and so I just put, there's a little panel back here that's black, with the roughness all the way up to give the blackness back there. So this already gives you an idea of what we're looking at, this kind of run down, bloody, dirty scene. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that these pictures, that one and this one over here, were created using AI. And I tend to use Canva online quite often when I'm doing graphics that I don't want to do in whatever graphic software I have. And they have a feature where they can generate something AI. So I just went on to Canva and I typed in some terms such as, I think, old people, scary portrait or something. And this is what they generated. And I said, hey, that looks fine for what I want. The same goes for the carpet. I believe I typed in some kind of old-fashioned floral carpet, and it created a design. And I got it, and I made it seamless in GIMP, actually, and then I used it in Substance Painter. So that's how I did those. Normally, I would probably either just use a sort of a wallpaper kind of design or a carpet design from the internet, or I would create some kind of pattern in Substance Designer, and I'll probably do that in the future. All right, I'm going to be talking about the materials, I guess, but I've covered the general model and the general lighting. Let's actually, before we go any further, let's go back to here and let's have a look in the UV editor. And what I want to do is I want to hide this. There is one other object that I will show you later. I'm going to select this and go into edit mode. And you can see, let's maximize that I have used the UDIM or UV tiles method. So I have a number of UV spaces or squares or grids or tiles. I've got 19 of them, and that allowed me to get a higher textile density or texture resolution for all the parts of the model, really. And I show you a little bit of this. I did do some marking sharp. Of course, that was when I created this, and I have done some seams on some of it. But some of this stuff, like for example, all these panels, some of these things were done with Smart Project, and some of them were done with Cube Project, and some of them were manually unwrapped, and it seemed to work okay. So I'm sorry I'm not going through the entire process of unwrapping because that could take a long time. So I did that, and as you can see, then I've got my UV tiles now. So for example, here is the mirror, and this looks like it's probably the doorknob, and some of the banister pieces, and you could probably recognize some Smart UV Project there. And I would tend to do that and then bring a piece or whatever into Substance Painter and see how it takes the texture. And if it's not looking right or it looks like there's some errors, I may go back then and change the type of UV unwrap that I do. All right, so once I had it all UV unwrapped, I was pretty much ready to go into texturing. And one of the things that I did differently this time compared to how I often will do it is I did the whole model at once. And I do not have the most powerful computer by any means, and you know, when I've got Blender running and Substance Painter running and a couple of other things running, and right now I've got my screen recorder running, and so you know, it was a little bit of an onerous file to use. Now, even though it's not that high poly, I mean, it's 105,000 tries. So it's not that crazy, but still, you know, not having the greatest computer. But it works fine. Also, when you're using the UV tiles, there's a lot to calculate all at once. So I'm going to switch over now to Substance Painter, and you can see the scene here in Substance Painter. It looked very similar to the material preview that I showed you in Blender. Move the light around. I do have shadows on. And this is sort of the textured view. Now I'm only at 1024, so the textures won't look as crisp as they do if I up the resolution. And I'm not going to do that because that will take quite a while for you to sit here and watch. Not quite a while, but it'll take a couple minutes for it to load. But you can see over here I've got this. It's called just hallway texture. One texture for everything. So once I attach it in Blender, everything gets textured instead of going through. I want the metal here, and I want this and that. And I wanted to do it this way because I wanted all the textures to interact, and I wanted to be able to put, for example, if I did this part of the wall and then this part separate, I couldn't do the blood splattering going from one to the other. Now I could do, there are ways to do that in Blender, but I wanted to do it all together so everything could interact with each other. So I've got the 19 UV tiles, and then I just went ahead and I started to texture it. All right, and I think probably the first thing I did was the wood, the chipped wood, and that's down here. I've called it wood, and I have a little note here, hospital wood, because I used this wood. I saved it as a smart material previously. I used it in the Haunted Hospital series of videos that I did, and I'm going to link you to that because in the particular video I'll link you to, I created the smart material. Okay, it wasn't on the banister or this wall. It was on a door, I believe, and on the windows and stuff. But you can still see it being created. So what I did is I brought it in and I applied it to everything, and then I went on and I masked out certain things so that only these things would be left with that material on there. And I may have made a few tweaks to it to change it a little bit so that it suited this scene a little bit better. So that was one material that I use, and that's a main material. So the main materials I've got here are wood, metal, and sort of concrete or plaster. I did actually use it in concrete because I liked it down here, and then I ended up liking it on the walls as well, although you would probably use plaster. Okay, so the next thing is walls, and you can see I've got a little note here that says concrete portal or concrete portal 1. When I created my dungeon, there was a dungeon scene that I made with the tentacles coming out of this round portal-like thing, and there were also the jail cells. I will link you to that video. The material that I created, this concrete portal material, ends up looking a little bit different in that scene than it does here. But it still is basically the same material, so you can see how that was made if you're interested in that. The carpet, like I say, was AI generated, and then I made it seamless, and I put it here, and I did a couple of things to it. The metal I have, which is in the these lamps. All right, there's a bit of blood splatter on there, the lamps, and I used it on the picture frames as well. All right, decided I want those metal, and on the doorknobs here, that metal was the same metal that I created when I did, what was that challenge? It was the tool challenge, and I did the underground, like the sewer system, where I had the sewer cover and the hole, and then I put some tools on top of that sewer cover. I had created this sort of reddish, rusty, scraped metal. I may have used that also in the fire extinguisher. Did I use a fire extinguisher? I can't remember. Anyways, I'm going to link you to those 3 videos. The one where I made the wood, the one where I made the concrete, and the one where I made the metal. And so I don't have to create them here for you. And of course, if you have any questions, I can always answer them. And then I did an emissive material on the lamps. And I did the mirror. The mirror and the window are the same material. I want just this reflective. You may not be able to see it too well at this resolution, but this reflective, dirty kind of thing. So you don't actually, there's no transparency. I don't have to change the shader here to use that alpha blending thing. I don't have to worry about opacity in Blender. It's just a highly reflective. And essentially all it really is dirt, very low roughness, and metallic all the way up. It's essentially like a metal, and that's how you commonly make mirror and reflective glass in Substance Painter. All right, so I've got that, and the pictures are AI generated, and on top of that I threw in a bunch of dirt, and I drew some dirt a little bit, and then we did some blood splatters, and that's done with the dirt brush, and I also used the particle brush a little bit as well. So there's the scene. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to talk to you about. Just looking at my list. No, not really. All right, so let's leave that. Let's go back into Blender and talk a little bit about just the setup of materials. Let me just grab that, go to the shading tab, and I'm going to maximize that. This is the typical setup that you would have when you bring stuff in. I know you can't read this. It's not really important at this point. You have the principal shader. You do Shift Control T. However, that's normally how you would set it up. And that doesn't always work well with the UDIMs. You can see down here it says UDIM tiles. So I tend to bring in an individual image and then find it, the 1001. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then watch some of my other UDIM videos. I have the base color here. I have the metallic. I have the roughness. And I have the height channel. I use height for this. Plug that in. Very low height, however. And I also have the emission here plugged into the emission and the emission strength at 3 so that we could get that effect. All right, so we're back in. However, it may not actually be all that evident in this material preview. but there is an emission on there. Now there is one other object in here that I haven't shown you. Actually, let me turn the lights on. That may help. It didn't so much. All right, and that is I've got a ghost, and it's colorized here. All right, sort of a translucent ghost that I thought would be the final thing that I would want in there. And I just want to show you the material for that ghost, and then I'll show you the actual final render. So I'll come over here and I'll maximize that. And what I did is I had the material output normally connected to a principal BSDF. I deleted that and added a mix shader. All right. Then I have a translucent BSDF and an emission. I've got my emission strength set at 7, and I've got a sort of a highly saturated blue, somewhat anyhow, and a lighter pastel blue or whatever. And then I've got a layer weight here with the facing plugged into the FAC, and I used a value of 0.4. So I had that, and that looks very cool right there, because you get this stuff here on the edges essentially. But then I wanted it a little bit see-through, and so I added another mix shader here with a transparent up there, and I just adjusted the FAC, and that ended up giving me the effect that I wanted for that, and I wanted the bluish kind of a color. So that is the scene, and so now we're going to have a look at a render. However, the render you're going to see is going to look quite different from this, because what I did is I rendered it, like I say, in Eevee, all right, and then I brought that into GIMP, and I applied some sharpening. Oh, by the way, I do have a little bit of stuff in the compositor. I've got the glare node on there, and I've got a little bit of color variation, a little bit more towards the blue. And that's it. So we really didn't do much other than adding a bit of glare mostly to this. Like I said, I brought it into GIMP, and I added some unsharp mask. And I may have played around a little bit with either levels or curves to probably increase the white and decrease the black, so that I have more actually white and black is what I'm saying. So I probably used curves, brought it up a little bit and down a little bit in an S curve. And then I used some software called Topaz Studio, which is, for the most part, it's for photography, to sort of like filters for your photography, and you can apply less or more of a particular filter, and you can also layer filters on top of each other. And I use that for my photography, but I also use it sometimes for renders, okay? And so the result will be quite different. So I'm going to show you the render now. And this is the final scene. I've decided to go for a relatively dark black and white contrasty image, and this is what I come up with. All right, I will zoom in a little bit. I guess I'll zoom into 100%. There's 100%. So you can see the texture on the walls due to that sort of concrete-ish smart material, and I decided that I like that. You can see all the dirt and the blood, and what I liked about this effect was that the blood ended up being sort of black. So the dirt and the blood kind of mixed together, and I liked that. Almost looks like, there's a lot of dirt, or there had been a fire or something. You can see the door a little bit off its hinge. The lamps give an eerie glow against the wall, and you can see the ghosts there. And interestingly enough, I finished this and I posted it on the Zero Bio Discord on Halloween Day. I didn't expect that to happen, but it just did. So this is the effect that I get with some tinkering in post-production, mostly in Topaz Studio, and this is the look that I ended up liking the most for this particular scene. Although I do have one more image that I'll show you, just to contrast that with another effect that I quite liked, again, through post-production in Topaz Studio with a couple of different settings for a quite bright lamp and the translucent, almost glowing ghost, and the just the general saturated colors in this particular scene. All right, that's the only angle. That's the angle that I wanted. I wasn't planning on doing it for multiple angles. I just wanted one image. And that concludes the hallway, the haunted hallway scene. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the series, were motivated or inspired by it, or learned something from it. And as you know, if you've been following any of my vlogs, I intend to continue in this vein of survival horror, horror or creepy scenes. I plan to do the stairway, maybe the basement, maybe the attic. We'll see, in addition to other projects that I have to do. All right, so thank you very much for watching the series, and I appreciate you coming by. I always do, and I always appreciate what you've said to me. You really motivate me to want to contribute in any way I can. I have said many times that I am not a professional Blender user or texture and substance painter, and I think you know that. But I just need to say it again. I am just doing what I can. I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy doing it for you. And if it's helpful, or if it just makes you say, "Hey, that was cool. I'm gonna do my own scene," then I've done my job. I'm not trying to impress anybody or pat myself on the back. But you guys have done that for me quite a bit, so thank you for that. All right, take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again. And yeah, let's keep it going.